What's up, guys? We're talking about plurinationalism, plurinationality. Plurinational or plurinationalism is defined as the coexistence of two or more preserved or sealed or preserved national groups within a polity, an organized community or body of peoples. In plurinationalism, the idea of nationality is plural, meaning that there are many nations within an organized community or body of peoples. Derived from this concept, a plurinational state is the existence of multiple political communities and constitutional asymmetry. The usage of plurinationality assists in avoiding the division of societies within a state or community or country or community. Furthermore, a plurinational democracy recognizes the multiple demoi, common people or populace within a polity. Reportedly, the term has its origin in the indigenous political movement in Bolivia, where it was first heard in the 1980s. As of 2022, Bolivia and Ecuador are constitutionally defined as plurinational states. Now, why is this important for the US and Canada? Which I believe should be breaking up into like 10 or 12 different countries, because the US is too big to be one country, Canada is too big to be one country. Okay, that's my opinion. And I believe they should be broken up into like 12 different countries. I also support the independence of and the national liberation of indigenous people, Puerto Ricans, Black people, Chicano people, Hawaiians, and people that are living in Hawaii, aka locals. I believe the Yukon and Alaska, the Yukon and South Central, the interior, and Northern Alaska and Western Alaska should be united as one, and Southeast Alaska and BC should be united as one. And I believe in forming a Pacific Northwest country that includes Alaska, the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. And I believe the U.S. Constitution is obsolete, and it was written by a bunch of racist Freemasons who were Zionists, and were also Protestants, right? And yeah, so it's been quite a while that I've advocated for indigenous sovereignty, and I've been in solidarity, and I've advocated for subsistence rights. You didn't know that I protested the Chewitna coal mine back in 2017. And I feel like I have a big stake in building a socialist America, not only as a working class people, not only as a working class person, but as someone who has cousins, friends, and family that are from oppressed nationalities. You know, I have relatives, I have friends, I have colleagues who are from oppressed nationalities. I have neighbors who are from oppressed nationalities. Okay? And yes, I might be overwhelmingly European, with mainly English, Irish, Dutch, and German, Spanish and Portuguese, Slovenian and Croatian, a bit of Norwegian Sami, and Italian, and Slovakian, Swedish, Roma, French, Ashkenazi Jewish, Basque, Albanian, Sephardic Jewish, Austrian, etc., etc. But my family wasn't always European. My family wasn't always European. In fact, my 11th great grandma was half indigenous. Her mom was Mohawk, her dad was French. Her name was Owatsak Ertel. Again, my 12th great grandma, Anawata, who was like the leader of the Turtle Clan of the Mohawk people, the Mohawk Nation in New York. That was my 12th great grandma. Her husband, Jacques Marot Hertel de la Fresnière, was a French fur trapper who was from Fécamp and Caux in Normandy. And then, he went to Canada, to Quebec, and then he went down to New York, met my 12th great grandma, Anawata, who was the queen of the Turtle Clan of the Mohawk Nation. But then, from what I know, some of her more distant ancestors were Inuktitut, because if you look at Genome Link, it'll say that I have some ancestry from the Arctic Islands. I believe that's more from northern Quebec, and that the Inuktitut went down to southern Quebec to trade with the Mohawk people, and then southern Mohawk people from New York went up to Quebec to trade with the Inuktitut people, and that's where they met, right? So, because I have a little bit of ancestry from the plains and eastern woodlands. So that being said, while I am overwhelmingly European, mostly English, Irish, Dutch, German, Belgian, Spanish, Portuguese, Slovenian, and Croatian. I have cousins who are indigenous. I have neighbors who are indigenous. I have colleagues, former classmates who are indigenous. And, growing up in a place like Alaska, which has the second highest rate of police brutality, and a large problem with systemic racism, it made me see the necessity, and has poor infrastructure as well, as I've detailed numerous times on this channel. It has opened my eyes and shown me the need for a plurinational, Pan-American type vision. And when I say Pan-American, I mean everything. Let's go to Google Earth. Let's go to Google Earth. I know I'm from Anchorage to the world. Let's go to Google Earth. Not only am I talking about the United States, I'm talking everything from Utqiagvik. I'm talking everything from Utqiagvik all the way down to Ushuaia, okay? Everything from Alaska all the way down to Chile and Argentina. Pan-American, okay? Pan-American, that's what I want. That's what we need, okay? This is what I want. I want to see Alaska, the main part of Alaska, excluding the Southeast Panhandle, unite with the Yukon, the Panhandle with BC. And then they'll form a coalition, a Pacific Northwest coalition of Alaska, the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and the northern part of California, basically everything north of Monterey. Okay? I want to see that. It's like a left coast and First Nations coalition in a plurinational communist society, in a plurinational communist government that has a capital either in Seattle, Vancouver, Oakland. Yeah, Seattle, Vancouver, or Oakland, That's what I want to see. Just like I want to see the northeastern United States, maritime Canada, and Newfoundland, Labrador, Quebec, and Ontario all become one political entity. And if you want, we can add in Manitoba and Nunavut. Okay? I want to see all of them become one political entity with a capital in either Ottawa, Montreal, or Toronto. Okay? Because look how big Canada is. Look how big the United States is. That's too big to be one country. Alaska is separated and isolated from the rest of the United States. Now, if Alaska was incorporated into some entity involving the Pacific Northwest, that was its own separate thing, and the United States were all divided up into their own separate things. You have your Azatlan, aka El Norte de América Latina. You have your left coast, your interior west, your northeastern region, the Midlands, your northern region, your southeastern region, and Miami and the Caribbean. That would be much better. Because think about it. There's like a gazillion different nationalities in North America. And also, there's nationalities inside North America that are oppressed, aka indigenous people, black people, Chicanos, and Puerto Ricans, and Hawaiians. Although Hawaii's it's Pacifica, so it's going to be its own country no matter what eventually, right? But you have people from Hawaii who are Kanaka Maoli in Vegas, Anchorage, Seattle, Tacoma, Portland, Eugene, Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose. Also, I said Seattle already, et cetera, right? Just like you have people from Puerto Rico in like Boston, Springfield, Worcester, New York, Hartford, New Haven, Philly, Newark, Trenton, etc., right? So the thing is, the US Constitution was written by genocidal human traffickers who were Zionist Freemasons and Protestants. Okay? That's the reality. And for all those pushing 1776 is a vision of racism. Because slavery and genocide, which has shapeshifted, so there's still slavery and genocide in the form of the prison industrial complex, police brutality, environmental racism, violation of subsistence rights. Slavery and genocide is what 1776 was based off of. We need something new. We need something new that incorporates all peoples in the Americas, whether they be indigenous, whether they be African, whether they be Pacific Islander, whether they be Asian, or whether they be European. Everybody's got to benefit. Everybody. Zero exceptions. 1776 is racist. The US Constitution is racist. Okay? The US as an entity must be abolished. Okay? Canada must be independent from England and eventually abolished. Okay? I have a big stake in this. Why? I have indigenous cousins. My 12th great grandma was indigenous. I probably got cousins in Latin America because I'm part Spanish. 22nd great grandpa was Esteban Fernández de Castro. Okay, he was born in Santiago de Compostela. His family was from Catrojeri originally. Like, he's even got his own, like, my family even has their own Wikipedia page. Like, Esteban Fernández de Castro, he obviously was born in Santiago de Compostela. He was Pertiguero Mayor de Santiago, right? So that's why it's probably easier. My background makes it easier for me to do solidarity work and be in solidarity with oppressed nationalities than maybe other people like Casserole Boy from Midwest Marks or other people. But plurinationalism needs to happen. Okay? Indigenous sovereignty, indigenous liberation needs to happen. Okay? It needs to happen. Plurinationalism needs to happen. And actually, my buddy Ramiro and my buddy B-Level from Ewoks Unhinged, Dialectics Unhinged, they did a video on this. Let's check it out.
Things that Honduras are going to have to change the constitution, creating the country from new. And that's where the name of her party, by the way, Libre, it means. So, Partido Libre, LIBRE Libre means freedom, right?
Yeah.
But the abbreviation is Libertad, Liberty, and Refoundation. Re. So like Liberty, Refoundation. So the Refoundation, what does that mean? That means constituent assemblies. That means creating things like how we've been talking about plurinational socialist democracy, recognizing the land rights of the Lenca people, who are the indigenous people that Berta Cáceres belong to, the Carifuna people from the Afro-Honduran community on the northern coast. That's one of the discussions that's taking place, how to allocate autonomy and political power and land for Afro-Indigenous communities. And also talking about rewriting the Constitution and including land rights for Afro-Indigenous peoples in the Constitution. These are the processes that took place in Venezuela as well, when it went from the Republic of Venezuela to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. They created a new constitution, new bylaws. So you're basically rewriting the country from scratch, which is a process in and of itself. But even if Xiomara is only able to do that, I'm sure if she does a great job, she'll get reelected again. But even if she's able to just do that, to renew the country, then I think that would be a tremendous benefit. And Bolivia has that as well. Bolivia is the plurinational Republic of Bolivia. And I think it's something that people are actively doing in Latin America and the Caribbean. And it's really important to study and learn from them, because it's not something that in the U.S., when we hear things like land back, or when we hear things like, talking about land sovereignty for indigenous peoples, we only associate it with the liberal NGOs that monopolize on that, and they do. That's 100%. Like, we have to be objective and say, like, Zoro's Ford Foundation, a lot of those people are investing mad hard into that, into, like, that stuff in the U.S. But when you talk to socialists in Latin America and all over the world, when you're talking about stuff like land rights, autonomy for indigenous peoples, refounding the country, creating a new identity, it's something that I think is really, really beautiful. So
that's what a lot of us, a lot of comrades I've been talking to up here in Canada that are real. We're talking about this plurinational republicanism. We're really inspired by what Evo and folks in Latin America are pushing, because when a country is built on a foundation of colonialism and built on a foundation of like white supremacy and keeping different groups down, you're never going to build something healthy from that. It's always going to be sick. At the root is about oppression. The root is about keeping people impoverished, including white workers too, that are, like, white supremacy is used to like lower the standard of all the workers, right? But like, you need to, like, as a radical, fundamentally pull at those roots, and that's what, like, getting down to the Constitution is, that moving it from this kind of bourgeois national state to a plurinational republic. So that's what we're talking about with plurinational republicanism. For anyone that doesn't know, it really is giving everybody the dignity, the land, the resources to thrive and live a dignified life. So tons of inspiration from Latin America. Really excited to see that Honduras is on that path.
That's a great video. And again, plurinationalism means everybody of all nationalities living a strong, healthy life, having all their needs met. And that's what we need, and we need a new constitution, because the Constitution now is a Freemason racist document. So, yeah. So, I agree 100% with B-Level and with Ramiro. By the way, shout out Dialectics Unhinged. Check out his channel. And yeah, so again, plurinationalism and the fact that, again, I have friends and family who are indigenous. That's what separates me, even though I'm mostly European. I have friends and family who are indigenous, even though I'm mostly European. That's what separates me from the Pat Socks and the MAGA clowns and the infracels and all those guys. That's what separates me. And I thought this was powerful from La Unión del Barrio, and this really spoke to me. We are Raza Internationalists, and we welcome all people who accept this political program into La Unión del Barrio, including those who are not of Mexican descent. I am not of Mexican descent, and like, I rock with this message, you know what I mean? Like, following the example of Ernesto Che Guevara, we see it as the revolutionary duty of all freedom-loving people to fight on the side of La Raza within the current borders of the United States. That really resonated with me. And yeah. So yeah, check out La Unión del Barrio. This is the first time I heard of this organization. And it talks about the Mexicano people as indigenous inhabitants of this continent and of what is presently called the Southwest United States constitute a colony of an illegal settler state that is an extension of European colonialism. The United States funded and directed the Anglo-Settler Rebellion in Texas in 1836, which set the stage for a United States war of aggression in 1846 to 1848. This war resulted in the occupation of the northern half of Mexico. This war imposed on los Mexicanos the position of a conquered nation, and since then millions of their people have fallen victim to racist Anglo settlers who exercise their individual state and economic power, hoping to maintain their servile status. That is why within the United States, the political system itself was founded on the principle designed to exploit their labor, the labor of lo Mexicano, keep a disproportionate number of people in prison, of the Mexicano people in prison, stereotype them through their media, falsify their history, and deny them a relevant, productive education, and militarize the border to keep them, lo Mexicano y lo Salvadoreño, out the very same people from which Azatlan, Mexico Ocupado was stolen. This historical relationship is sustained through an ongoing campaign of state terrorism, La Migra, the cops, and ever-increasing overt and violent expressions of racism by reactionaries of the United States white nationalist population, a.k.a. Tucker Carlson, people like that. You know what I mean? Joe Arpaio, people like that, right? These are all direct manifestations of colonialism, but we must understand that we, los Mexicanos, are also subject to contradictions of neocolonialism. La Unión del Barrio is cognizant of the current neocolonialist tactics of the oppressor, which include the use of their own people, the Mexicanos' own people, against them. Neocolonialists are puppet lackeys, appointed or self-appointed, who usually win financial support from the colonial system. The primary role, they're talking about like Nick Fuente and people, and Kanye West and people like that. The primary role of the neocolonialists is to confuse the large numbers of la raza. Kanye West would be an example for the black community, but for the Mexican community, Nick Fuente, people like that. The primary role of the neocolonialist is to confuse the large numbers of la raza into thinking that they are making progress within the current political system and that they can achieve individual access or success only if they buy into U.S. imperialism. So for Puerto Ricans, that would be like AOC. For Inupiaq people, that would be like Tara Sweeney, Caitlin Sweeney. For Yupik people, that would be like Mary Peltola. I see this pattern, I see this pattern, you know what I mean? The primary role of the neocolonialist is to confuse, I see that pattern. For the Hawaiians, it would be like Kaniela Ing or Daniel Akaka, I think. And I believe for the Samoans, it would be like Ma'otosi, like people like that. Because Ma'otosi, he endorsed Dunleavy. Isn't that repugnant? Isn't that repugnant? Yeah, it's repugnant, especially because he's an East alum, you know what I mean? And especially because Ma'otosi is Pacific Islander and Alaska has the second highest police brutality rate in the United States. But that's a tangent. We're going to do another video on that a different time, but this is a ploy that is central to the classic colonizer tactic of divide and conquer. Instead of the Mexicanos focusing their energy on overturning imperialism, this tactics pits them against opportunists of their own kind and redirects their attention to distrust other oppressed nationalities. I think we've seen a lot of that in the past several months, in the past 2 or 3 months with Fuente and with Daddy Yankee and all of them. And it's not only in the Mexican community that has seen that. It's literally every oppressed nationality in North America has seen this. So, and that's why we need a plurinational, but also internationalist program. Okay. So, and I'm just going to go and read the most important parts. So they fully understand that nationalism can lead to reactionary positions in race politics, particularly nationalism within an oppressor state, examples being white nationalism, Nazism, fascism. And La Unión del Barrio also understand that nationalism within an oppressed nation is, generally speaking, a progressive development and an effective weapon in the struggle of liberation. Yes. And this is the difference between, say, an oppressed nationality rocking 100% with their nationality and someone in the imperial core doing pat sock crap, right? That's the big difference. The oppressed nationalities are oppressed. They're trying to win their liberation. You know? The Pat Sox are glorifying the oppression of oppressed nationalities. Again, another reason why we need plurinationalism. Yeah, 100%. So we need like an internationalist plurinationalism. This is a big one. They recognize, La Unión del Barrio recognizes that their struggles intrinsically linked through history and practice to the movements of oppressed and colonized people throughout Nuestra América, and they believe, therefore, that the term raza internationalism best describes their political relationship to the rest of Nuestra América and the world. Their obligation as they strive to build a revolutionary party is to recognize the right of all oppressed people to self-determination, to uphold the principle of continental emancipation as embodied by the Bolivarian Revolution, and put forth by Cuauhtémoc, Tupac Amaru, Simón Bolívar, Fidel Castro. My cousin, Fidel Castro, is actually somehow related to me via the Castro family, obviously. Hugo Chavez, José Martí, Ricardo Flores Magón, Valentina Ramírez, Augusto Cesar Sandino, Farabundo Martí, Luisa Moreno, Celia Sánchez, Ernesto Che Guevara, Magdalena Mora, and other raza patriots. We will carry forth the struggle on all fronts to bring about a democratic and socialist, unified, indigenous raza America. And the America's history parallels and intersects with the experience of Africa, Asia, and Oceania. Their histories are burdened by their common experience, suffering under conquest, slavery, exploitation, and military intervention, as well as a shared challenge to win freedom. And it is their duty to recognize, is our duty. I say our, and I'm saying our because it's communist duty to recognize these ties and our common enemies, and support all peoples fighting, struggling for self-determination against imperialism. 100%. I agree 100%. Yeah. However, we caution those in our movement not to fall in the trap of opting for the safe, liberal, and abstract struggle against imperialism elsewhere while refusing to unite against its manifestations here in Azatlan, Mexico, Ocupado. Although our liberation is prioritized, we still must support and commit resources to aid those nations who fight for decolonization and all forms of foreign aggression, and for the right of non-intervention. The most powerful contribution we can make is to our brothers and sisters of Africa, Asia, and Oceania, is the creation of a unified, revolutionary, socialist Mexico and Nuestra América. Thus, La Unión del Barrio upholds the principle of raza internationalism as a fundamental principle of our ideological unity. Again, I agree 100%. Plurinational internationalism. I believe in plurinational internationalism. The solidarity to the other continents, right? And also a plurinational Nuestra América. I agree 100%. Yeah. Yep. So, a revolutionary. I agree. Revolutionary Party. I agree with this too. Democratic centralism. I agree 100%. Yes. Yes. This is 100%. Liberación exige organización. Estoy de acuerdo. 100%. So yeah, this is like the cliff notes on plurinationalism, but I definitely have a stake in this, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to bring about plurinationalism here in the Americas. So there you go.